And that, class, is why the Zorgblatt's third stomach is considered a delicacy on at least 17 different planets Professor Zilks droned on, his tentacles waving lazily in the air as he pointed to a holographic diagram of the creature's digestive system. Glix, a blobby Zoraxian student, suppressed a yawn with one of his gelatinous appendages. He glanced around the classroom, noting the various alien species present, from the crystalline luminars to the gaseous nebulites. And then there was her, Samantha Johnson, the only human in the Intergalactic University of Nanobiology, a Deathworlder they called her kind. Glix had always found the term a bit dramatic, but then again, he came from a planet where the most dangerous creature was a mildly irritating form of sentient moss. Samantha sat at the back of the class, her eyes fixed on the professor with an intensity that made Glix wonder if she was trying to bore holes into his exoskeleton with her gaze alone. He'd never quite understood how a species could evolve to look so solid. No tentacles, no hover sacs, not even a single photosynthesizing appendage. Just 2 arms, 2 legs, and a worrying amount of teeth. Now, class, Professor Zilks' voice cut through Glix's musings. Today we have a special treat. In honor of our esteemed human exchange student, I've procured a specimen from her home planet for our practical lesson. A ripple of excitement passed through the classroom, punctuated by a few nervous squeaks from the more anxiety-prone species. Behold, Professor Zilks announced with a flourish, pressing a button on his hover podium. A containment field in the center of the classroom flickered and vanished, revealing a cage. Inside was a creature that made even Glix's gelatinous form quiver with apprehension. It was covered in fur, with gleaming yellow eyes and teeth that looked sharp enough to slice through quantum-reinforced steel. This, class, is what humans call a housecat, Professor Zilks announced proudly, as if he'd just unveiled the secret to faster-than-light travel. A collective gasp echoed through the room, followed by the sound of several nebulates condensing in fear. But Professor stammered Blorp, a timid slimoid. I thought humans were the apex predators of their world. Surely this housecat must be even more terrifying. Professor Zilks chuckled, his laugh sounding like a malfunctioning garbage disposal. Oh no, my dear Blorp, this is what humans keep as pets. Fascinating, isn't it? Now, who would like to approach the cage and observe its behavior up close? The silence that followed was so profound you could hear a whisper moth's wings flutter on the other side of the seaside. Come now, Professor Zilks cajoled, his tentacles twisting in what passed for encouraging gesture in his species. Surely one of you brave xenobiologists in training is up for the challenge. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to study a creature from the infamous Deathworld up close. Glix watched as his classmates sank lower in their seats, some literally melting into puddles of anxious goo. Even the usually stoic lithoids seemed to be trying to blend in with their desks. And then, a voice from the back of the class. I'll do it. All eyes, stalks, and sensory organs turned to face Samantha as she stood up, a slight smirk playing on her lips. Excellent, Professor Zilks exclaimed, his voice a mixture of relief and barely concealed surprise. Come down, Miss Johnson. Show us how a Deathworlder interacts with one of its planet's predators. Samantha made her way to the front of the class, her steps echoing in the nervous silence. Glix couldn't help but admire her confidence, even as he questioned her sanity. As she approached the cage, the housecat let out a sound that made several students lose control of their hover sacks and bump into the ceiling. Oh, aren't you just the cutest little thing, Samantha cooed, reaching into the cage without hesitation. Glix felt his sensory nodes short-circuit. Was she actually touching the beast? And was that rumbling sound coming from the creature a sign of imminent attack or pleasure? This, class, Samantha announced, lifting the cat out of the cage and cradling it in her arms, is Mr. Whiskers. He's about as dangerous as a bowl of nutrient paste, unless you happen to be a small rodent or a particularly slow-moving insect. The cat, seemingly content in Samantha's arms, began to purr louder, its eyes closing in what appeared to be bliss. But the teeth, Blorp exclaimed, his slimy form quivering. And those retractable claws. Surely it's a killing machine. Samantha laughed, a sound that still unnerved many of her alien classmates. Oh, Mr. Whiskers here is definitely a predator, but to something about the size of your average datapad. To us, he's just a fluffy companion. Here, who wants to pet him? The collective gasp that followed her offer was enough to cause a momentary drop in the room's atmospheric pressure. Come on, he doesn't bite. Well, not usually, Samantha added with a wink that did nothing to reassure her classmates. After a moment of tense silence, Glix felt an inexplicable urge to prove himself. Maybe it was the way Samantha's eyes seemed to challenge the class, Or perhaps it was the allure of touching something from the infamous Deathworld, whatever the reason. Glix found himself undulating towards the front of the class. "I'll try," he managed to say, his voice only quivering slightly. Samantha beamed at him, an expression that Glix had learned meant approval in humans. "That's the spirit. Just extend one of your appendages and gently stroke his fur, like this," she demonstrated, running her hand along the cat's back. Mr. Whiskers arched into the touch, his purr intensifying. Glix hesitated for a moment, then slowly extended a gelatinous pseudopod towards the creature. As his appendage made contact with the soft fur, he felt a strange sensation ripple through his form. It was pleasant. "See? Not so scary after all, is he?" Samantha said, her voice soft. Encouraged by Glix's bravery or foolishness, depending on who you asked, other students began to cautiously approach. Lumina, a Luminar student whose crystalline body sparkled under the classroom lights, was next to pet Mr. Whiskers. "It's so warm," she marveled, her facets glowing with excitement. Even Professor Zilks couldn't contain his curiosity, extending a tentative tentacle to stroke the cat's head. Mr. Whiskers, apparently deciding that the tentacle looked like an interesting toy, batted at it playfully. "Fascinating," Professor Zilks exclaimed, quickly withdrawing his tentacle. "The creature displays predatory instincts, yet restrains itself from causing harm. Truly remarkable." As the initial fear subsided, more and more students gathered around Samantha and Mr. Whiskers, each taking turns to interact with the earth creature. The classroom buzzed with excited chatter and the occasional nervous giggle. "You know," Samantha said, addressing the class, "on Earth we have a saying, there's more than one way to skin a cat." The sudden silence that fell over the room was almost comical. Several students took a step back, their expressions or equivalent horror-struck. Samantha burst out laughing. "It's just an expression. We don't actually skin cats. It means there are multiple ways to solve a problem." "Human idioms are terrifying," Blort muttered, his slimy form still quivering slightly. "Oh, you have no idea," Samantha replied with a grin. "Wait until I tell you about raining cats and dogs." The look of sheer panic that crossed Professor Zilks's face was priceless. "Your planet has precipitations of domestic predators. How do you survive?" Samantha opened her mouth to explain, then thought better of it. "You know what? Let's save that for another lesson. For now, who wants to learn how to make Mr. Whiskers do tricks?" The next hour passed in a blur of excitement, laughter, and the occasional startled yelp as Mr. Whiskers showcased his ability to jump impressively high for treats. By the end of the class, even the most nervous students had warmed up to the Earth predator. As Professor Zilks wrapped up the lesson, his tentacles waving enthusiastically, Glix couldn't help but feel a newfound respect for Samantha and her species. If this was how they handled their predators, perhaps Deathworlders wasn't such an apt term after all. "Remember," class Professor Zilks said, as the students prepared to leave, "next week we'll be studying the dietary habits of the Terran Darkshan. Miss Johnson has assured me it's even less threatening than today's specimen." As the class filed out, chattering excitedly about their encounter with Mr. Whiskers, Samantha hung back, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Hey, Professor," she called out. "For the Darkshan lesson, mind if I bring in my friend's pet? He's a real sweetheart, goes by the name of Killer." The look of sheer terror that crossed Professor Zilks's face was almost enough to make Samantha feel bad. Almost. As she left the classroom, Mr. Whiskers contentedly purring in her arms, Samantha couldn't help but smile. It was going to be an interesting semester. The next week, anticipation hung in the air like a thick fog as the exonobiology class gathered once again. Rumors had been swirling about the mysterious Dakshan that Samantha was supposed to bring in. Some students had attempted to research Earth fauna, but the university's database on Terran life was woefully incomplete, a fact that suddenly seemed more ominous than merely inconvenient. As the students filed in, Glix noticed Samantha was absent. He felt a mix of relief and disappointment. Maybe the Dakshan had proven too dangerous to transport after all. Professor Zilks hovered at the front of the class, his tentacles twitching nervously. "Settle down, everyone. I'm sure Miss Johnson will be here shortly with our specimen." Just then, the door burst open. Samantha strode in, a leash in her hand. At the end of it was. "By the 7 moons of Zex's Blorp," exclaimed, his gelatinous form rippling with shock. "It's some kind of serpent." The creature at the end of the leash was long, low to the ground, with stubby legs and a face that seemed to be mostly snout. It trotted into the room, tongue lolling out, looking for all the world like it was grinning. "Class, meet Killer," Samantha announced, her face a perfect mask of seriousness. The name sent a shudder through the room. Several nebulets condensed into tight, frightened balls. "Miss Johnson," Professor Zilks began, his voice an octave higher than usual. "When you said killer, I assumed it was some sort of ironic moniker. But given the creature's clearly predatory features..." Samantha couldn't keep a straight face any longer. She burst out laughing, a sound that still made some of her classmates flinch. "Oh, relax, Professor. Killer couldn't hurt a fly." "Well, he could, but he'd probably just lick it to death." To demonstrate, she knelt down and allowed the Darkshan to lavish her face with enthusiastic licks. The class watched in a mixture of horror and fascination. "You see," Samantha explained as she stood up, wiping her face, "Darkshans were bred to hunt badgers. They're long so they can follow badgers into their burrows." "And what, pray tell, is a badger?" asked Lumina, her crystalline form shimmering with curiosity. Samantha paused, considering how to explain without causing another panic. "It's another earth animal. Kind of grumpy. But don't worry, there are no badgers here. Killer is just a lovable goofball now who wants to pet him." This time the class was slightly more receptive. Glix, emboldened by his experience with Mr. Whiskers, was the first to approach. "Careful," Samantha warned as Glix extended a pseudopod. "He might just..." Before she could finish, Killer had bounded over to Glix and begun enthusiastically licking his gelatinous form. "Do that," Samantha finished, trying not to laugh at Glix's expression of surprise and confusion. "It tickles," Glix exclaimed, his form wiggling in a way that might have been either discomfort or delight. It was hard to tell with Soraxians. Encouraged by Glix's survival of the encounter, other students began to cautiously approach. Killer was in his element, doling out licks and tail wags to anyone within reach. Even Professor Zilks couldn't resist, extending a tentative tentacle to pat Killer's head. "Remarkable," he muttered. "A predator species converted into a... what did you call it, Miss Johnson?" "A lovable goofball." "That's right," Professor Samantha nodded. "Humans have a long history of domesticating animals. We've turned wolves into puppies, big cats into house cats, and even some birds into pets." The class listened in rapt attention as Samantha began to explain the concept of domestication. It was a side of human history they'd never considered before. "So you're saying," Blorp interjected, his slimy form quivering with excitement rather than fear for once, "that humans took some of the most dangerous predators on their planet and made friends with them?" Samantha grinned. "Pretty much, yeah. We saw big, scary wolves and thought you know what. I bet with a few thousand years of selective breeding, these could be really cuddly." The class erupted in a cacophony of amazed exclamations, questions, and in the case of the nebulets, impressed whistling sounds. Professor Zilks waved his tentacles for quiet. Class. Let's approach this scientifically. Miss Johnson, could you elaborate on the process of domestication? How does one go about turning a predator into a pet?" Samantha spent the next hour explaining the basics of selective breeding, genetic modification, and the thousands of years of human-animal coexistence that led to creatures like Killer. The class was enthralled, peppering her with questions that ranged from insightful to hilariously misguided. "But aren't you afraid they might turn on you?" asked a nervous-looking lithoid student, his rocky exterior practically vibrating with anxiety. Samantha chuckled. "Well, I won't lie, sometimes dogs can be dangerous. But for the most part, they're loyal to a fault. There's a reason we call them man's best friend." This led to a whole new round of questions about human-animal relationships, the concept of interspecies friendship, and the apparent human tendency to befriend anything that moved and some things that didn't. As the class wound down, Professor Zilks looked slightly dazed but undeniably excited. "Well, class, I think we can all agree that this has been a most illuminating session. Ms. Johnson, thank you for bringing in Killer and for your unique insights into Terran biology and history." Samantha beamed, scratching Killer behind the ears. "Happy to help, Professor. Maybe next time I can bring in a tarantula." The look of sheer panic that crossed the professor's face was almost comical. "A what?" "Oh, just a type of spider. About this big." Samantha held her hands about 8 inches apart with furry legs, and she was cut off by the sound of several students fainting and at least one nebulate evaporating in shock. "Perhaps," Professor Zilk said weakly, "we should stick to less intimidating specimens for now." As the class filed out, still buzzing with excitement and newfound curiosity about Earth fauna, Glix hung back. He approached Samantha, his gelatinous form undulating with what she had learned to recognize as nervousness. "Samantha," he began, his voice wobbling slightly, "I was wondering, could you tell me more about Earth animals? They seemed so interesting." Samantha's face lit up. "Sure, Glix. How about we grab some nutrient paste at the cafeteria, and I'll tell you all about the weird and wonderful creatures of Earth." As they left the classroom, Killer trotting happily beside them, neither of them noticed Professor Zilks slumped in his hover chair, madly scribbling notes and muttering about rewriting the entire exonobiology curriculum. Over the next few weeks, Samantha's impromptu lessons on Earth fauna became the talk of the campus. Students from other departments started showing up to the exonobiology classes, eager to learn about the strange creatures from the Deathworld. Samantha, for her part, was loving every minute of it. She regaled her alien classmates with tales of elephants and giraffes, of tiny hummingbirds and massive blue whales. Each new animal she described was met with a mixture of disbelief, awe, and the occasional fainting spell. "You're telling me," Lumina said during one of these sessions, her crystalline form glittering with excitement, "that there's an Earth creature that can change its skin color at will?" Samantha nodded, grinning. "Yep, chameleons. They're pretty amazing." "Oh, and there are octopuses that can not only change color but also texture to blend in with their surroundings." The class erupted in amazed chatter. Professor Zilks, who had long since given up on following his original curriculum, just sighed and made another note to update the Terran fauna database. But it wasn't just the animals that fascinated Samantha's classmates. They were equally intrigued by humanity's relationship with these creatures. "So, let me get this straight," Blorp said one day, his slimy form quivering with confusion. "Humans keep animals called fish in small glass boxes in their homes, but they also catch other fish from the wild and eat them." Samantha chuckled. "Yeah, I guess it does sound a bit weird when you put it like that, but hey, that's humanity for you. We're full of contradictions." This led to a long discussion about Earth's ecosystems, conservation efforts, and the complex relationship between humans and nature. Samantha found herself learning as much as she was teaching, seeing her home planet through new eyes as she tried to explain it to her alien friends. As the semester progressed, something remarkable began to happen. The fear and apprehension that had initially greeted Samantha began to fade, replaced by curiosity and even admiration. The term Deathworlder was still used, but now it was often spoken with a tone of respect rather than terror. Glix, in particular, had become one of Samantha's closest friends. He was endlessly fascinated by Earth's biodiversity and would often seek her out between classes to ask more questions. "Samantha," he asked one day as they were leaving the cafeteria, "do you ever miss Earth? All those amazing creatures and places you've told us about?" Samantha paused, considering the question. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But being here, seeing Earth through your eyes, it's made me appreciate my home in a whole new way. Plus, the universe is full of wonders. I'm excited to learn about all the amazing life forms out here too." Glix's form rippled in what Samantha had learned to recognize as a smile. "Well, we're certainly glad you're here. You've taught us so much. And not just about Earth animals." "Oh," Samantha raised an eyebrow. "What else have I taught you?" "That appearances can be deceiving," Glix said thoughtfully. "That what seems scary at first might turn out to be fascinating if you take the time to understand it. And that humans, for all your terrifying adaptations and bizarre habits, are actually pretty cool." Samantha felt a warmth spread through her chest. "Oh, Glix, you're going to make me blush." Which, before you ask, is when human skin changes color due to increased blood flow, usually because of strong emotions. Glix's form rippled with laughter. "There you go again, always full of surprises. You know, I think that's what we've really learned from you, Samantha. Life, whether on Earth or any other planet, is endlessly surprising and wonderful." As they walked to their next class, Samantha couldn't help but smile. She had come to this university hoping to learn about alien life forms, but in the process, she had taught her classmates about the wonders of Earth and helped bridge the gap between their worlds. The semester was drawing to a close, but Samantha knew this was just the beginning. There was a whole universe out there, full of incredible creatures and cultures to discover, and who knew? Maybe one day her alien classmates would visit Earth and see its marvels for themselves. As they entered the classroom, Professor Zilks was setting up for another lesson. This time, there was a holographic projection of a creature Samantha recognized immediately. "Today, class," Professor Zilks announced, his tentacles waving with excitement, "will be studying a most remarkable Earth creature, the platypus." Samantha burst out laughing at the baffled expressions on her classmates' faces. Oh yes, this was going to be an interesting lesson indeed. As she took her seat, ready to help explain one of Earth's most bizarre creatures, Samantha couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, she was helping to change the galaxy's view of humanity, one weird animal fact at a time, and really she wouldn't have it any other way. The platypus lesson turned out to be even more entertaining than Samantha had anticipated. Professor Zilks, in his enthusiasm to present Earth's bizarre fauna, had somehow managed to conflate several Australian animals into one impossibly chimeric creature. And so he declared, gesturing wildly with his tentacles at the holographic abomination before them. The platypus not only lays eggs and produces milk, making it a sort of egg-dairy hybrid, but it also has a pouch like a kangaroo, can leap great distances like a wallaby, and has venomous spurs that can take down creatures 10 times its size. Samantha couldn't contain her laughter any longer. "I'm sorry, Professor, but I think there's been a bit of a mix-up in your research." The class turned to her, a mixture of confusion and anticipation on their alien faces. They had learned by now that when Samantha corrected the professor, things were about to get interesting. While platypuses are indeed egg-laying mammals, they don't have pouches or leap like kangaroos. And while the males do have venomous spurs, they're not quite as deadly as you're suggesting. You seem to have combined several different Australian animals into one super creature. Professor Zilks's eye stalks drooped in embarrassment. "Oh dear. It seems I may have gotten a bit carried away with my terra and fauna research. Perhaps, Miss Johnson, you could enlighten us about the true nature of the platypus." Samantha spent the next hour explaining the actual characteristics of platypuses, as well as clearing up misconceptions about kangaroos, wallabies, and other Australian wildlife. The class was enthralled, peppering her with questions that ranged from insightful to hilariously misguided. "But if the platypus doesn't have all those features," Blorp asked, his slimy form rippling with confusion. "Isn't it a bit disappointing?" Samantha grinned. "Not at all. The platypus is plenty weird on its own. It's one of only 2 egg-laying mammals in the world. It uses echolocation to find prey underwater, and when it was first discovered, scientists thought it was an elaborate hoax. This led to a lively discussion about Earth's evolutionary history, convergent evolution, and the sheer diversity of life on her home planet. Samantha found herself drawing parallels between Earth's unique creatures and some of the alien species she'd learned about in her time at the university. As the class wound down, Professor Zilks looked both embarrassed and excited. "Well, class, I think we can all agree that this has been another illuminating session. It seems that when it comes to terra and fauna, truth is indeed stranger than fiction, or at least stranger than my misguided attempts at research." The classroom erupted in laughter, a cacophony of various alien sounds that Samantha had come to find endearing. As they filed out of the classroom, Glix oozed up beside Samantha, his gelatinous form vibrating with what she now recognized as excitement. "Samantha, I've been thinking. What if we organized a Terran Wildlife Appreciation Club?" Samantha's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "A club? Really?" Glix's form rippled in what passed for a nod among Zoraxians. "Yes, there's clearly a lot of interest in Earth animals among the student body. We could have regular meetings where you teach us about different Earth creatures, maybe even bring in more live specimens if the university allows it." The idea caught on like wildfire. Within a week, the Terran Wildlife Appreciation Club had over 50 members from various departments. Samantha found herself at the center of it all, coordinating meetings, preparing presentations, and fielding an endless stream of questions about Earth's biotity. Their first official meeting was dedicated to big cats. Samantha had managed to borrow Mr. Whiskers again for a live demonstration, much to the delight and slight terror of the club members. "Now, Mr. Whiskers here is obviously a domestic cat," Samantha explained as the feline in question lazily batted at a toy. "But he shares many characteristics with his larger cousins, lions, tigers, leopards, and so on." She pulled up a holographic display showing various big cats. The alien students watched in awe as images of majestic lions, sleek cheetahs, and powerful tigers flickered before them. By the cosmic void breathed Lumina, her crystalline form shimmering with excitement. "These creatures are magnificent. How do humans survive on a planet with such predators?" Samantha chuckled. "Well, for the most part, we stay out of their way. Many of these big cats are endangered now, actually. We've set up reserves and conservation programs to protect them." This led to a lengthy discussion about Earth's conservation efforts, the concept of endangered species, and humanity's complex relationship with nature. The alien students were particularly fascinated by the idea that humans would go to such lengths to protect animals that could easily kill them. "It's like you said before," Glix mused, his gelatinous form undulating thoughtfully. "Humans have this amazing ability to see past the scariness of a creature and appreciate its beauty and importance." Samantha nodded, feeling a swell of pride for her species. "That's right. We've done a lot of harm to our planet over the years, but we're also capable of great compassion and understanding. It's all about finding balance." As the weeks passed, The Terran Wildlife Appreciation Club became one of the most popular extracurricular activities on campus. They covered everything from deep-sea creatures to insects, from Arctic animals to tropical birds. Each meeting brought new revelations and sparked fascinating discussions about evolution, adaptation, and the sheer creativity of life. One particularly memorable session was dedicated to extinct Earth animals. Samantha had prepared a holographic presentation showcasing creatures like the woolly mammoth, the dodo, and the Tyrannosaurus rex. The alien students were awestruck by the massive dinosaurs that once roamed Earth, but they were equally fascinated by humanity's efforts to study these long-gone creatures. "You mean to tell me," Blorp asked, his slimy form quivering with excitement, "that humans dig up the fossilized remains of these ancient beasts and use them to learn about Earth's past?" Samantha nodded, grinning at her friend's enthusiasm. "That's right. We call it paleontology. It's how we've learned so much about Earth's prehistoric life." This sparked a lively debate about the nature of scientific inquiry, the importance of understanding a planet's evolutionary history, and the ethical implications of de-extinction efforts. As the semester neared its end, Samantha realized how much she had grown from this experience. She had come to the Intergalactic University of Xenobiology to learn about alien life forms, but in the process, she had gained a deeper appreciation for the wonders of her own planet. Moreover, she had helped bridge a gap between her human heritage and her alien classmates. The term Deathworlder was now used more as a term of endearment than fear. Her fellow students had come to see humanity not as terrifying savages from a hostile planet, but as a species that had found a way to thrive alongside some of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy.